Saudi Arabia, Pakistan and Turkey defense agreement has a new power bloc emerged in the region. The world is currently going through a period in which rivalry among global powers, growing tensions in the Middle East, and a changing regional security environment are forcing many countries to reconsider their defense policies. And amid this changing environment, an important development has emerged. On August 7, 2026, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan and Turkey signed a joint defense agreement in Makkah. This is not merely a diplomatic document between three countries. It has raised several important questions about the future of the region. Why was this agreement needed? What is its real purpose? Is it simply a defense cooperation agreement? Or is a new balance of power being established in the Middle East and South Asia? And most importantly, could this agreement eventually develop into a larger regional defense alliance? Let us try to understand the entire situation. The important agreement signed in Makkah, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, and Turkey signed a joint defense agreement in Makkah on August 7. The basic idea behind the agreement is that the three countries will cooperate with one another in the fields of security and defense and strengthen mutual defense cooperation in the event of aggression against any member. The agreement comes at a time when the Middle East is already facing serious security crises. Saudi Arabia is seeking to strengthen its security position in the Gulf, Pakistan is focused on its defense interests in South Asia, while Turkey is expanding its role as an important military power in the Middle East and the wider region. But why these three countries? This is a very important question. Pakistan has a large and experienced military and has maintained defense cooperation with Saudi Arabia for decades. Turkey possesses a modern defense industry, advanced drone technology, naval and air capabilities, and a strong military structure. Saudi Arabia, meanwhile, has one of the region's most important economies, substantial financial resources, and a highly strategic geographical position in the Gulf. In other words, the strengths of these three countries are different. Pakistan military experience and manpower. Turkey defense technology and industrial capability. Saudi Arabia financial strength, strategic geography and influence in the Gulf. If this cooperation becomes stronger at the practical level, the three countries could benefit significantly from one another's capabilities. Is this an Islamic NATO? After the agreement emerged, some social media discussions and analyses began describing it as an Islamic NATO. But one thing is very important to understand here. It would be premature to call it a replacement for NATO at this stage. NATO is a highly organized military alliance with its own command structure, joint planning mechanisms, and an institutional system developed over several decades. The complete practical details of the current agreement between Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey have not yet been made public. Therefore, presenting this agreement immediately as a new NATO would be premature. However, it can certainly be seen as having the potential to take defense cooperation among these three countries to a new level. Why is this agreement important for Pakistan? For Pakistan, Saudi Arabia has always been an important partner. The defense relationship between the two countries goes back several decades. The inclusion of Turkey could give this cooperation a broader regional dimension. Turkey is already an important defense and technology partner for Pakistan. The two countries have cooperated in areas including defense production, naval projects, drones, and other military technologies. Now, Saudi Arabia's financial and geographical strength is also being brought into the same framework. This could create new opportunities for Pakistan on both the defense and diplomatic fronts. Why is Saudi Arabia giving it importance? Saudi Arabia is seeking to strengthen its defense capabilities amid a rapidly changing security environment in the Middle East. Recent regional crises have demonstrated that Gulf countries need to strengthen cooperation with regional partners rather than relying solely on external powers for their security. Saudi Arabia has therefore been working to expand defense and security cooperation with various countries. Pakistan and Turkey could become two particularly important partners in this strategy. Turkey's role. Turkey may be the most interesting part of this agreement. Turkey is already a member of NATO. Despite this, it is also expanding separate defense cooperation with Saudi Arabia and Pakistan. Over the past several years, Turkey has significantly strengthened its domestic defense industry, its drone technology in particular, has helped establish Turkey as an important player in the global defense market. Pakistan has also been cooperating with Turkey on defense technology and various military projects. Therefore, this agreement could potentially open new avenues for joint defense production and technological cooperation. What does this mean for India? The impact of this agreement may not remain limited to the Middle East. Its effects could also be felt in South Asia. Pakistan and India have already been engaged in a long-standing security and defense competition. The new agreement could strengthen Pakistan's regional defense relationships. Indian analysts are also likely to closely examine the potential implications of this development. However, it is important to emphasize that describing the agreement directly as an anti-India alliance would not be justified at this stage. Its actual objectives and practical limitations will become clearer over time. Where does Iran stand? This is one of the most sensitive questions in the entire situation. Saudi Arabia and Iran have historically been involved in intense regional competition, although in recent years both countries have also made efforts to improve their relations. At the same time, continuing tensions in the region have encouraged Saudi Arabia to pay greater attention to its defense posture. However, saying that this agreement was directly created against Iran would be an analytical claim rather than an established official fact. The stated focus is on strengthening the three countries' joint defense capabilities and deterrence. What about the United States? Another major question concerns the United States. Saudi Arabia is an important security partner of the United States. Turkey is a NATO member. And Pakistan has maintained defense and diplomatic relations with the United States for decades. Therefore, it would be difficult to describe this new agreement simply as an alliance against the West. A more likely interpretation is that the three countries are attempting to balance their relationships with different partners according to their individual security requirements. In other words, the world may be moving toward a situation in which countries no longer rely exclusively on a single major power, but instead maintain relationships with multiple global powers and regional partners at the same time. Could other countries join? This is another important question. Recent discussions and analyses have raised the possibility that additional countries could eventually move closer to this defense framework. But it is important to distinguish between speculation and actual policy decisions. If more countries eventually join, the agreement could develop into a broader regional security network. But even if it remains limited to these three countries, its strategic significance would not necessarily be reduced. The real test begins now. The real strength of any defense agreement lies not in its signing, but in its implementation. Will the three countries conduct joint military exercises? Will intelligence sharing increase? Will there be joint defense planning? Will they jointly develop new defense technologies? And most importantly, if one member faces a genuine military threat, to what extent will the other two provide practical assistance? The answers to these questions will ultimately determine the true strength of this agreement. A changing world, the world is rapidly entering a new geopolitical era. The United States, China, Russia, Europe, and the powers of the Middle East are building new partnerships to pursue their respective interests. In this environment, a joint defense framework between Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, and Turkey could demonstrate that regional powers are also searching for new ways to strengthen their security. This is not merely the story of three countries. It could also be a sign that the global balance of power is becoming increasingly complex in the years ahead. Conclusion: the defense agreement signed in Mecca certainly marks the beginning of a new chapter. But where will this chapter lead? Will it remain limited to defense cooperation among three countries? Or will it become the foundation of a broader regional defense alliance? Will it change the balance of power in the Middle East? And will Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey be able to establish a more organized security partnership in the years ahead? The answers to these questions belong to the future. But one thing is clear: the defense agreement that began in Mecca has already sparked a new debate in South Asia, the Middle East, and global politics. And perhaps in the years to come, we will discover whether it was simply an agreement or the first building block of a new regional security system.